Well, thanks, guys. It's really lovely to be with you. We have been in similar circles in the same rooms, and we met, I think, Bree, you and I met a couple of years ago through a common employer, and then Josh and I connected at a conference recently, and I just grew to love this couple. You guys have a powerhouse team here, right? And the whole team that I've gotten to know and I'm getting to know. God's doing a really neat thing here in your community. In my many years, I've been at a lot of different kinds of churches. My husband and I have 3 grown sons. They're all married. We live in Colorado now. And I've been at like Catholic church where I grew up. I've been in Methodist churches. I've been in Baptist churches, Bible churches, all kinds of different churches, covenant churches, been in different non-denominational, all kinds of different churches. And then really for the last 18 months, my husband and I had moved to a different town in Colorado and had a friend in the area. And I thought, I wonder where that guy goes to church. Maybe we could see where he is. And it's a vineyard church. So like you guys, I have now been part of a vineyard church for like the last 18 months. And it has been such a gift. So I know that maybe many of you are also still early on in a journey of coming and getting involved in the Vineyard Church. So I wondered, like me, has anyone else been 18 months or less part of this church? Just curious. That's cool. I love it. Way to go. Wait, today's your first day? Welcome. Well, it takes a lot of courage, right, to go somewhere where you've never been and then to try to figure out, how do I get involved with these people? And I happen to know one person there, but I just give you credit. Keep going, keep diving in, keep doing all the things. But I will say from my experience of a N of 1, the researchers would say, being part of a Vineyard Church has been very life-giving to our family. Very healing even in some cool ways. So I'm grateful for that. So anyway, over the years, as I guess you heard from the video, I have had the privilege of being involved in a lot of different kinds of ministry leadership, like Christian leadership contexts, and business leadership. So I've been in executive leadership in ministries and in the marketplace and all kinds of stuff. But in this season of my life, I'm actually giving my full time to a passion that has been in me since many, many years ago through a hard season that kind of woke me up to the reality of my soul and how important it was to lead my life out of the overflow of what I think of as soul health, rather than this kind of grindy, hustle-driven thing that I sadly was good at and too good at, and then just smashed my life apart in some hard ways. And so God graciously opened up a path to me to help me learn how to care for my soul, which I had never really thought of before. And so in this season of my life, really it was kind of coming out of the pandemic and some of the sort of growing awareness in our culture at large that we're kind of not well. And that it's been a really hard time for many people with isolation, anxiety. I mean, none of that is unfamiliar to you, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And so I left a really awesome job that I loved in order to move full-time with a team to saying, how can we help people care for their souls? How can we come alongside people in their actual lives and help give lift to this really important topic that many people are aligned with, but life kind of happens along the way. And even if our intention is to live out of a deep connection with God, it can easily get lost. Maybe that's not true in LA, but it is true everywhere else I've been. So I'm going to go out on a limb and assume it might be here true as well. So we're really concerned as a team about addressing and getting on the prevention side of what we think of as the burnout, the flame out, and the dropout that is all too often the case. One data point to share with you, and I won't go too deep into this, but it was such compelling number of CEOs who had been surveyed in this calendar year. They're mostly nonprofit CEOs. What they had said, the Center for Effective Philanthropy had asked leaders, senior executive leaders, what was their level of concern of their own personal burnout, right? So can you imagine if somebody asked you that today? Like, what's your concern right now for you in your personal level of burnout? Now, these are the people that are leading the organizations that are feeding the hungry and working with the homeless and addressing social concerns and justice issues. These are the leaders of these kinds of organizations. 9% said it's not a concern at all. At the other end of the continuum, the highest answer category was it's very much a concern. Anyone want to guess what the percentage of people who self-reported that their own burnout was very much a concern? That would have been a very good guess. I should have set that up better. No, it wasn't 91. It's good math, though. But it was 46% said that is a very large concern for them this year, right now. This is 2026 data. This is not like 2021 when everybody's still trying to get their feet. This is now. And this is what we're seeing, our team is seeing, everyone we talk to, everyone we work with, no matter what their kind of work, it's been very difficult. And I think many of you may be seeing this in your line of work. So I've heard, this is not my field, but people who are in healthcare, doctors, nurses, other kinds. Anybody here in healthcare? Okay. How many of you have seen burnout as a factor in your place of employment? Yeah. Okay, how about teachers? Who's in education? Yep, I hear that burnout is an active conversation in that context as well. Is that true? You're seeing that? Yep. All right, so we got education, we got healthcare. There's a couple other professions I've heard about. Therapists. How many of you all are therapists and like social workers? Yep. Do you see it in your line of work as well? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of us. How about parents? Burnout among parents. I don't mean to make light of it, but I'm just making point. It is just universal. Many of us are just running so low on our reserves. And I believe God invites us into a way of life that will help fill and refill and continue to refill what we need in order to operate out of the overflow of His life, God's life in us. And we think of that as caring for your soul. So a lot of times when I'm talking about the care of the soul, I'm sort of case making, why it's important, why your soul can get lost along the way, and what happens when your soul's well or not. I'm not going to do all that today, but I will leave you with the punchline or one portion of the punchline, because then people will say to me, well, Mindy, what's the one thing I should do? What's the one thing I should do to take care of my soul? And I have usually got a bit of an interior eye roll, like, are you kidding? Like, why does everything have to be a one thing? But I felt really impressed when a second leader asked me that question, that I needed to listen to maybe if God had an answer to that I could serve them with, even if I might have not liked that they were trying to just look for the one thing. And I felt like I heard, Mindy, just tell him he needs a page, a person, and a plan. So this is the Cliff Notes. This is not the point of this talk, but a page, a person, and a plan is a really simple framework to think about how to arrange your life for what we think of as soul health, how God's designed you to be living in the overflow. So the page, journaling, person, who is a connection point that you can be truly honest, your full self with, and the plan is what are you doing to be intentional about that. So all that is unplanned bonus. What we're going to talk about is that page, the blank page. Now, isn't that odd that something as simple as a blank page could actually help care for your soul? I mean, there's nothing on it. What could possibly be the value of a blank page? And ironically, it really can become the thing that opens you up to looking into your own life, letting the noise floor drop enough to get quiet, get honest with yourself, become aware, self-aware of what's really going on inside, and then through your words, bring that true self into expression to God, to others. A page, turns out, is a very powerful driver for your soul's well-being. And you might think, well, that still doesn't sound very spiritual. What is so connected to God with a page or a journal? And some of you, I should just say, some of you are journalers already, yeah? How many journalers? Yeah. Some of you love to journal. Okay, who hates journaling? Okay, so we're equally dispersed. That's okay. No shame in that. I'm not here to tell you that that's the only thing that matters, but I am going to make a slight case for it. Because a blank page is a non-judgmental invitation to what's really going on inside. And sometimes that's a safe place to start a conversation about what's real. A blank page, one that we start writing on. As we reflect on our lives, maybe we write about what we're learning, what our emotional state might be, our impossible situations. Anybody facing any impossible situations right now? Yeah. And sometimes it's really good to write that out. It's really good to just write. This feels impossible. I don't see any way out of this. The threats, the things that are threats, the things that are joys, those are things. Like whatever is going on can be fodder for what you're going to write in a journal. But here's what I also know about journals. This is kind of the entire focus of your summer series. Because the Psalms are really the expression of mostly David, but other writers as well, interior worlds put into writing. The Psalms is the best example of journaling that we see in the Bible, where somebody actually wrote down the good, the bad, and the ugly, who gave full expression, put full voice to the anger, the fear, the hope, the joy, the exuberation, the isolation, the hopelessness, all of it. It's all mashed up and in there. And, some of the Psalms are so dark, you wouldn't even believe they were in the Bible. Like, what? How is this even in the Bible? Because it is so the opposite of encouraging when you first read it. But talk to somebody who's been struggling with depression or with mental health and have them read Psalm 88, and all of a sudden, they feel met. They feel seen. And I believe that psalm and others like it tell us is that God meets us in the full range of human emotions. He meets us in all those places. They're mostly thought of as songs, but I think of them as journals. Now, I love the psalm we're focusing on today is Psalm 139. That may be familiar to you. It might be new to you. And I find that it is, we're going to read through it together. It's just one of my favorites. It portrays just this beautiful truth of how fully known, how fully loved, and fully surrounded by God we actually are. Some of you, maybe even on your way here today, might have been like, I don't feel close to God. I feel far, but I'm going to church because I know that that's important. But you don't feel that nearness. And you're going to be confronted. If you're not familiar with this psalm, you will be confronted with a picture of God's nearness that will blow your mind. And I think it's an important thing to name that we live in a world, maybe you have noticed this as well, that is dead set on convincing us that we are alone. That we are alone, that we are unloved, and that we are unlovable. We are not worthy of love. That is the air we breathe. That is the environment we're in. That is the voice of evil, most times, trying to convince us that we're alone, we're not loved, and we're not lovable. And I'm here to tell you, no matter how isolated you may feel today, no matter how difficult your circumstances, no matter how far you may have been running from God, which we use as a metaphor, right? No matter how far you've been running from God, as my son once said, and I'll tell you more about this in a bit, running from God is like running on a treadmill. He's still right there. We'll say more about that in a bit. But for now, let's get into the psalm. I want to read through it with just a little bit of commentary here and there, and we'll spend time in three kind of discrete movements that I think are at the heart of what David is offering us here. And I'll be skipping a few verses at the end. Those of you who know the psalm well will recognize that, not because they're not worth our attention, but because they raise a whole set of questions that I don't have time to do justice to right now. But definitely read them on your own. It'll provoke your thinking on how they're connected to the rest of this psalm. So this is Psalm 139. And if you want, you can read along in a Bible. You can actually close your eyes if you just want to hear the scripture read over you, whatever would make you feel comfortable. But it starts and ends with a similar idea. David, the psalmist, says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways." Now I want to pause and ask you to just think back of this morning so far. Where did you wake up? Who did you talk to? How did you get here? Now let's go back. Put that all in the front of your brain. And I'm rereading. You have searched each one of us, God, and you know us. You know when we sit and when we rise. You perceive our thoughts from afar. You discern our going out and our lying down. You are familiar with all our ways. Guys, that's every moment, every movement, every thought before it's even formed. David goes on to say, before a word is even on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in. You kind of surround me, behind and before. You're all around me, and you lay your hand on me. Such knowledge, he writes, is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Now, it's kind of interesting that David doesn't seem to be alarmed by this level of proximity, right? He's not threatened by it. To us, that might be a little terrifying. You've hemmed me in, you've got me here, and your hand is on me. Like, we're just not used to thinking about God being that intimate, that immediate, that close. David's saying this is wonderful. So how does that idea sit with you? That he's so close. He goes on to say, David says, where could I even go from your spirit? Where could I flee from your presence? Maybe you do decide that was a little too close. I'm out of here. There's nowhere you can go. If I go up to the heavens, God, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there, your hand, and listen, your hand isn't just hovering, watching, judging. Even there, while I'm on the run, your hand will guide me. Your right hand, God's right hand, the strength of God, will hold me fast. There's nowhere to go. That's the whole point. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. Now, if this is your first time hearing Psalm 139, we're going to hunker here and listen. This is like a ridiculous thing that God says through the hand of David. If we say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light, whatever light is around, will become night around me, like that picture of deep hiddenness, isolation, I'm alone. David says, even the darkness is not dark to you. You know, you've seen those military goggles that allow you to night vision thing, you know? God has that vision. When you are surrounded by what is dark, which dark can also be a sort of a metaphor in Scripture for evil. When we're surrounded by evil, even the darkness is not dark to the Lord. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. Isn't that a beautiful thought, guys? This is who is surrounding us all the time. He goes on to say, you've created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. We live in a world that is dead set against convincing you that you are anything but fearfully and wonderfully made, right? I mean, come on, scroll Instagram for 30 seconds and you're a mess. I mean, you're not, but yeah. So David's writing, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully. I mean, this is still a growth edge for me. I do not wake up every morning, look in the mirror and go, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, right? We just live in this world that is constantly telling us we're not enough. You're not this enough, you're not that enough, you're not whatever. But David knows God's heart toward him. And he can easily say, I believe, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame, my design, right, your design was not hidden from God when I was made in that secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes, God's eyes, saw my unformed body. And then this crazy line, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Like, how intimate is that? How near is that? How precious, he writes, are your thoughts toward me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. At the very tail end of this psalm, David turns it to a prayer. He says, search me, God. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. And that last phrase, those two verses, are a prayer that's actually worth committing to memory if you feel so inclined. That's a good one to hang on to. And again, we'll come back to it. So the three kind of main movements that I want to walk through here, it won't take long. But I hope these stick with you as a bit of a frame to think about moving forward as you think about Psalm 139. The first is that God is near, okay? Hopefully you felt that as I was reading through. God is near, like as near as your breath. As near as what's in front of and behind you, what's above you and below you. God is as near as your breath. The second is that we are known. Deeply, fully known. Anticipatory kind of knowing. Before a word is on your tongue, he knows it. And then the third is that we are led. That prayer at the end, search me, O God, know my heart, test me, know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive thing in me and lead me. Lead me in the way everlasting. Lead me in a right path. So God is near, we are known, and the third is that we are led. But if you're wanting to go for some alliteration, so I'm sorry I couldn't resist, because this is what preachers do. If you really want it, you could say it was near, known, and nudged. But that's up to you. All right, so on this idea of near and being beloved in that nearness, one thing I've encountered as I've visited LA at different times is that this is a city very much interested in or aware of appearances. Is that a fair thing to say? Oh, yeah, I'm like, come on. Which certainly is true in New York and Boston and Atlanta and Dallas and many other places as well. But only in LA did I walk up to a hotel with my son one time where I was checking in a couple of years ago because I, travel. I'm checking in at the hotel, but I'm the next person in line to get to the registration area, and there's a very handsomely dressed, beautiful couple standing there, and the wife turns around and looks at me. Okay, so she's the one at the registration desk. She turns around and looks at me, didn't do that hand motion. I don't remember what she was doing with her hands, but I will tell you from her eyes, she took one look at me, went all the way down to my shoes, went all the way back up, and I did not pass that test. I don't know what the test was exactly, but I knew I didn't pass it. And I was like, wow, this is a rough place. This is a very different atmosphere. And isn't that a picture of how the world is, right? The world measures us top to bottom, bottom to top, and it has a verdict. But I will also say this, that I've been in LA enough with other rooms, with enough Jesus people, to know that something else is entirely possible. Some of the most accepting, genuinely loving, committed to what's actually real people I know are right here in this city. And because of that big contrast of what the world around us, and then maybe a little bit especially here, the people of God stand out as a bright light when you create spaces of welcome, of acceptance, of love. When you create places that say, you are seen, you are known, you are welcome here, my goodness, what a contrast, what a light. And that's the kind of contrast that I think we see in Psalm 139, that this is what David is trying to say, that God knows you. Never mind a community, but I think a community can take on the characteristics of God. But God knows you. He does the full review and declares you wonderful. Amen. He sees it all the way through, inside out, top to bottom, front to back, and what he finds there moves him to love. Love, not to judgment. There's nowhere you can go from his spirit. If you go up to the heavens, he's there. If you make your bed in the depths, there too. Rise on the wings of the dawn, settle on the far side of the sea, he is still there. And then even the idea that even darkness is as light to him. When you're in a season that's super dark, you don't know the way forward, you feel like you're being opposed by something you can't even see, God is not squinting. That place, wherever you are right now, is not hidden from God. You are not off the map. You are not in the void. Contrary to all that, you are actually surrounded. You are surrounded by love. You are surrounded by goodness. You are surrounded by grace. And so this brings me a little bit to this story with my son. We've been praying as a family, like trying to bring up, like, what's a prayer request that you have at dinner table? You ever try to encourage prayer as a family? We were trying to do that. And one night, it was like dinner time in the winter in the Chicago suburbs. And so it was dark outside. And of course, right as everybody's sitting down to have dinner, there's no milk. So we have to make the emergency milk run. So John and I get in the car, and I'm thinking, oh, this is like a little moment, mom and son, and this is a good conversation time. Let's try to make the most of it. So I went back to the idea that we had talked about the day or two before and said, oh, remember we prayed about this thing at your school that you had kept getting in trouble for distracting other students. So we prayed about that as a family. I said, whatever happened with that? And he's like, oh, it was so great. I went in the next day, and the teacher had a whole new seating chart, and I got moved, and it hasn't been an issue since. So I'm like, oh, this is a teachable moment. Like, wow, like we prayed, and this happened. And do you see the connection between when we pray and we feel close to God, and we see how God might move, and it gets kind of quiet in the back seat. And he says, well, aren't we always close to God? And I'm like, well, still thinking it's a teachable moment. I blow right through it. I'm like, yeah, well, but there's times we can kind of walk away from God. And we walk away from God, and then we might not as be inclined to pray about a thing, and we might not see how God would answer prayers. I'm fighting. I should have stopped fighting. But I'm like trying to connect the dots between you're close to God, you pray about a thing, and God moves. And so I say all that stuff that I just said. And he's in the back seat again, and he's like, this whole idea of walking away from God, I think he'd never really heard of. And he said, well, I think walking away from God is like walking on a treadmill. He's 10 years old. And it got quiet in the front seat. Because I'm like, whoa, you just like rung my bell. He knew Psalm 139 better than I did. There's nowhere we can go that is away from God's presence. You can run, but you're running on a treadmill. He is still there. He is always there. You are surrounded by love. I think God wants us all to know from Psalm 139 that he is near as our breath, He knows our comings and our goings. He knows the words that we're speaking. He is near. And we are known. So that's the second part. Being near someone isn't the same as being known by them. A crowd could surround you, but God knows you. The next verses move from God's presence everywhere to God's knowledge of you specifically, down to the cellular level, down to before your first breath. David writes, "You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." Knit together. That is not like assembly line language. This is craftsmanship. This is design. This is the creator of the universe, the one who put together like gazelles and giraffes and whales and all the things, has designed each one of us. That's how you were made, with that kind of attention and that kind of care. He goes on to say, your eyes saw my unformed body, and then this one, all the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. I like to sit with that. Like, have you had a couple bad days ever? Or a good day, a really good day? What does that mean that all these days were sort of foreknown by God? I was one time back when I had my own sort of crash. We were doing something similar to what you all are doing here in Boston, and it was just like a series of unfortunate events. Anybody have a day like that? Like, you get one bit of bad news and another bit of bad news, and then one more thing happens, and somebody else is leaving, and something else didn't come through that you thought was going to happen. And I remember sitting on my couch as yet one of those bad news things came my way, and a bit being angry at God. Like, it's like, is this some kind of cosmic joke? Like, what is this? What is going on? And somehow, it wasn't judgy, it was encouraging, if anything, but just, I felt the impression of this particular verse on me. And I want to leave it for you as well. If you are having a what is going on kind of day, to remember all the days ordained for me were written in your book. Even this one. Even this hard one that I can't see a way out of. Even this one where the bottom is falling out. Even this day. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be, which is also kind of a subtle reminder that there's a whole book and there's more days coming. And sometimes we need to remember that. I've returned to that more times than I can count, because I've had a lot of days where the bottom might seem like it's fallen out. And I've had some really beautiful good ones too. And it's good to remember that the author of our lives, that we kind of co-author our life with, he makes sure there's some good days as well. Doesn't make them easy, but it makes them survivable and more than survivable. It makes it possible when we can recall that God's nearness and his knowing what's going on in a really hard bottom falling out kind of day. It makes it possible for you and for me to stay present to God, even inside pain, because we're not outside of his awareness or care. Does that make sense? If you're like me, like you feel pain and you're like, you want to withdraw. This is hard. I don't understand. There is no way out. I want to hide. I want to withdraw. Maybe I made a terrible mistake. All of that makes me want to withdraw. But there's nowhere we can go. And every one of the days ordained for us were written. He knew. He has always known. And then it's followed by, how precious are your thoughts to me, O God? How vast is the sum of them? Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. Now, unlike Boulder, Colorado, you guys actually have a lot of sand around here, right? So you can imagine picking up a handful of sand, right? You got it? Got that in your hand? Okay. How many grains of sand are in there? Has anyone counted? I've never done that. Okay, now drop that back into the beach. Now how many grains of sand are there? Okay, now put that beach, like zoom out on Google Earth, and how many other beaches are there? Okay? This psalmist is saying something that I believe is true to the nature of God. That his thoughts, specific thoughts toward you, of his love, his intention, his desire, his creativity, his everything over your life are as numerous as the sand, grains of sand on the sea. How vast is the sum of them? And they are thoughts of goodness toward you. That's this God that we came here on a Sunday morning to engage with and to know more about. David goes on to say, when I awake, I'm still with you. All right, so we've talked about how God is near as our breath, how we are known, front to back, top to bottom, and loved. And this last idea is where we'll land, is that we are led. We are led by God. You may not expect that at the end of this anthem to being near and to knowing, David turns the corner to a prayer, a very humble, open-ended prayer. Search me, O God, know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. This is a prayer of surrender, not achievement, of humility, recognizing that our interior world is super complex and full of anxious thoughts. Like this prayer was written, 3,000 years ago or more? This is a pretty modern theme. Every one of us, when we wake up at 3 a.m. with anxious thoughts, anybody else? Okay? We wake up in the morning and those are in the middle of the night. And that's why committing this prayer to memory is just such a beautiful thing. Search me, O God, have your way. Look at everything. See what's going on inside. What are my anxious thoughts? We need help understanding what's going on inside. But here's the other part of the prayer that's really important. A lot of times, you imagine it's 3 a.m, I'm laying in bed, there's all the crazy, and I'm like, all right, search me, O God, know my heart, test me, know my anxious thoughts. Okay, so maybe he might say, here's the thing you're anxious about. Then we take that up like a little self-improvement project, right? Who's the Instagram influencer that told me about what to do about this? Or I go problem solve, I do what makes sense to me, and I go take action, because we don't like being in pain, we don't like being confused, so I'm like, I gotta go make this happen, I gotta go address the anxiety, or whatever is tumbling around in my head. Guys, the most important part of this beautiful prayer is not just the authenticity, the search me and know me, the see if there's anything offensive in me. Okay, that's a humble prayer to ask. But David does not assume he knows the path out. That's where I get stuck the most. We had a repentance time in prayer this morning, and that's what I would have repented of. Now I get to do it with all of you. So often, when I see something either in me or in my circumstances that needs to change, I run to self-reliance. What is my own understanding? The more responsible I feel for a thing, the more likely I am to try to go make it happen. Guys, let's pick up the clue phone from David, who had the humility, a pretty strong and wise person, had the humility to say, search me, God, know me, test my anxious thoughts, see if there's anything offensive in me, and help me go make it better? No. And lead me in a different way. Being led by the God of the universe, this is what's so important about it. I love AI. I think it's great. It's fun. It can only look backwards. It can be predictive models, but it can only based on what's out there already. Only the God of the universe knows what's around the corner. Only the God of the universe knows what's actually best for you. Only the God, and yes, leverage AI. I'm all for it. But open your mind to hear the direction from the living God. What is he going to lead you in? Yes, be wise, research, do all the things. But let yourself be led by the one who knows you and what's really going on. That self-improvement is like not a real thing. If all our self-help actually helped, we'd be a very different culture. So how do we move into a way of life that allows us to stay yielded, aware, open, yielded, and obedient to whatever he's leading us into? What I love about being part of a Vineyard church is that after the message part, like what I'm doing now, we open it up for a time of ministry. And there's communion, you can receive prayer, there'll be some worship, and we can think of it as a time to respond to what God's been doing in our hearts and in our lives. And so you may want to take communion and be reminded afresh of the forgiveness available in God, no matter what offensive way has been in you. You may want to come forward for prayer if you've struggled, especially with those anxious thoughts, or wondered whether your life was seen or had value. And I know there will be prayer team people here who will be excited to pray with you. And you don't even have to say why. You can just say, hey, I just need prayer. And they'll do the rest. Or you may simply want to sit quietly, let the music do what music does, wash over a weary soul and bring something back to life. So I'm just going to end with that verse, the prayer at the end, and then let that lead into a prayer, and then we'll move on to the rest in this time of response. And so, God, it's maybe presumptive of me, but I'm going to say on behalf of this beautiful group, this community, would you search us, oh God? Would you know our hearts? We call to mind that you look with eyes of love, not judgment, not condemnation, not criticism. Search us, oh God. See what's really going on. Test us, know our anxious thoughts. God, if there are parts in us that are just offensive to you, to ourselves, to our community, to our families, oh God, would you just give us enough revelation that we can handle to see something that might need to change? And give us the courage to look at it boldly, to see it for what it is. And give us restraint from self-improvement, God. Give us restraint from figuring out or assuming we know what ought to be there instead. And God, if you would, God, would you lead us? Lead us in this way everlasting. Lead us in the way that you've designed us for, that you've designed us to contribute in the world. Lead us in the way everlasting, God. And we thank you for Psalm 139 that reminds us that you are near, that we are known, and yes, that you'll nudge us. Amen.